So I've been keeping this video on the back burners for months now, waiting for the right time to talk about it. And with the Bleach anime going away for a few months before returning, I think this is the right time to get back to some of the old video ideas, just to keep things moving until the Bleach anime comes back. So we're going to start with some character analysis series and just work from there, starting with Old Man Zangetsu. Now, Old Man Zangetsu is one of the most misdefined and mysterious characters within Bleach mythology. For a long time, we believed him to be the source of Ichigo's Zanpakuto powers. To us, he was Zangetsu, but as the story of Bleach continues to unfold and truths begin to reveal itself, Zangetsu's identity shifted into something more profound and complex. I've had a lot to say about his character for a long time, and I think the time has come for us to dive deep into the complex nature of Old Man Zangetsu's character. Someone who was not beyond lying to Ichigo, but still one who, despite the lies he told, never wavered in his honest desire to protect Ichigo. So, Kubo's introduction to Old Man Zangetsu comes in volume 8 of Bleach, which showcases a very cool photo of Old Man Zangetsu upside down. It's a very cool way to introduce the first look of a character in my opinion. It's chapter 63 of Bleach, and Ichigo right now is training with Urahara to regain his Soul Reaper powers. Quick moment for context. Ichigo fought against Renji Yubara and Byakuya Kuchiki, who came to apprehend Rukia. Ichigo defeated Renji, but he was suddenly beaten by Byakuya, who shattered his Soul Chain and Soul Sleep. Now, the Soul Chain and Soul Sleep are these concepts that Kubo created, and what they basically do is that they act as the wellspring of spiritual power for a spiritual being. Once you shatter that, a Soul Reaper loses their ability to Soul Reap. In some extreme cases, they lose all their spiritual awareness. Kisuke right now is trying to get Ichigo to become a Soul Reaper once more. He's stuck him at the bottom of what he calls Shattered Shaft, and Ichigo has to try to get out of the pit without using his hands before he turns into a hollow. Now, at the 11th hour, the encroachment begins and Ichigo begins to turn. This is when he's sent into his inner world. So, let's switch for a second and think about this. Presumably, every Soul Reaper should have their own version of an inner world, some place where their inner Zanpakuto resides. We get to see Ichigo's and it's quite amazing. His inner world is comprised of multiple skyscrapers. Not only that, the mechanics and physics of his world are all warped and messed up. He's seated on the side of the building, but he's not falling down. He turns around and this is when we get a glimpse of Old Man Zangetsu, who's balancing on a sword staring right at Ichigo. Ichigo asks him who he is and Old Man Zangetsu attempts to speak his name, but Ichigo cannot hear it. There are some who believe this to be the work of Ichibei Hyosobe, but I'll let you be the judge of that. He then starts levitating on the opposite side of the nail he's balancing on, and this catches Ichigo's attention. Comically, the moment Ichigo realizes where he's sitting, he begins to fall, as though the laws of physics only worked when he expected them to. He falls down below into an ocean of water as his entire world crumbles, and Old Man Zangetsu tells Ichigo to find the boxes among the horde falling down that is his Soul Reaper power. Byakuya Kuchiki intended to end the battle by simply destroying Ichigo's wellspring of Soul Reaper power, but he forgot to account for one thing. He forgot to prepare for the possibility that Ichigo himself had Soul Reaper powers of his own. Now, Ichigo manages to find the box that held his Zanpakuto and ultimately pulls it out, saving himself from fully holofying. We then don't see Old Man Zangetsu until chapter 66, entitled The Blade and Me. Ichigo has just witnessed Kisuke call out the name of his Zanpakuto, and he remembers that Renji did the same thing. This prompts him to begin to question himself, and as he's being chased by Kisuke, running for his life, he begins to hear Old Man Zangetsu's voice. He stands before Ichigo with a fierce look in his eyes and gives him some vital piece of advice. Why do you run, Ichigo? You still haven't called me. The only thing plugging your ears is fear. There's only one enemy and one of you, so what is there to fear? Abandon your fear. Face forward. Don't give an inch. Retreat and you will age. Be afraid and you will die. Call out my name. Ichigo then calls out his name, Zangetsu, and transforms. This interaction between Ichigo and Zangetsu is very important to where Ichigo is going to end up going as a character, but it shows you the kind of person Old Man Zangetsu is. He seems very logical and not driven by just emotion. Just the act of telling Ichigo that, hey, there's one opponent and one of you, so why do you fear? Stand forward and face him. If you turn your back to your opponent, it's gonna make it easier for him to kill you because your back is turned. And so with that, we learn a little bit of information about Old Man Zangetsu's character and the type of individual that he is. Now, knowing what we know about Bleach and Ichigo, he should be speaking with Zangetsu on a consistent basis. He really should, but we don't get to see Zangetsu until Ichigo enters battle with Kenpachi Zaraki in chapter 110. Before Zangetsu actually shows up, we get a really cool moment with Ichigo during his battle with Kenpachi where he's overwhelmed by Zaraki's power and he's panicking because he can't cut Zaraki's skin. During that time of crisis, he puts himself into a corner and you can see him talking to himself, reminding himself of the words Old Man Zangetsu spoke to him. Abandon your fears. If you retreat, you will die. He reminds himself of those words. Now, Ichigo doesn't fare too well against Zaraki and gets a sword through his chest. As he's bleeding out, Old Man Zangetsu appears before him. He walks to Ichigo and stands right in front of him and simply asks a question. Do you want to fight? Do you want to win? Or do you want to live? Which is it? Now, Kubo is asking a very loaded question here, because there's a very big difference between Ichigo saying he wants to live versus Ichigo saying he wants to win. If your only goal is to live, there is something that is lost in the process. There's a specific kind of conviction born from someone in Ichigo's specific situation. Trying to fight against an entire military organization to save a woman who saved your life is serious, and so his answer here is extremely important. Ichigo screams out and declares that fighting for its own sake is meaningless. Survival in of itself is meaningless. I want to win. Old Man Zangetsu then makes physical contact with Ichigo and transports him back into his inner world. Here, we learn a few more bits of information that will matter a whole lot very soon. Old Man Zangetsu remarks that the reason Ichigo's world was crumbling before was because his body was undergoing a hollification transformation. What we see now is how it normally is, and not only that, despite Ichigo being in a fierce battle, his inner world is still stable. This is important and will matter moving forward. In any case, Old Man Zangetsu hands Ichigo a sword called the Nasauchi, and then he summons the normal Zangetsu and throws it off the ledge. Ichigo obviously reaches out to grab it when another Ichigo dashes right past him and grabs Zangetsu. Now, Ichigo must take Zangetsu from himself if he wishes to deem himself worthy of wielding the blade. What happens next is that Kubo uses this other Ichigo to make an important point about Zanpakuto relationships, along with Old Man Zangetsu's feelings towards Ichigo. Zanpakutos are sentient, they're alive, and they have feelings, motivations, and desires. To awaken a Shikai is to learn a name, but it does not merely stop there. White Ichigo actually accuses Ichigo of being just like Zaraki. You cannot become friends with someone just by asking their name. You think you're better than Zaraki, who only chooses to rely on his own power, but you're actually the same as him. You believe that the only one you have to train is yourself. It's arrogant and prideful. You haven't even tried to draw out more of Zangetsu's power because you're so focused on yourself. Credit to Ichigo though. After being shown the error of his ways, he changes his mind, and Old Man Zangetsu responds to this change by switching their blades and granting Ichigo a massive boost in power. After Ichigo returns back to the battlefield, he and White have a conversation, with White asking Old Man Zangetsu to train Ichigo properly. All that power will be mine someday, he says. He is then absorbed back into Old Man Zangetsu, who then turns to the skies and has a moment that really encapsulates the kind of writer Kubo is. Old Man Zangetsu says, Ichigo, I hate the rain. It rains here too in this world. When you're upset, the skies grow cloudy. When you're sad, it rains. And I can't stand it. I wonder if you can grasp what it feels like to be rained upon in this lonely world. To be able to hold back this rain, I'll give you everything I have. Should you place your trust in me, I won't let any rain fall on this lonely world. Believe me, Ichigo, you aren't fighting alone. And one of the things I've always wondered about this is that, did Ichigo hear Zangetsu's words? Did he hear what he had to say? Sometimes I feel like Ichigo did, and other times I truly feel like Zangetsu may have been speaking, but it didn't intend for Ichigo to actively hear him. Ichigo's battle with Zaraki rages on, and we come to find that Ichigo's bleeding has stopped, presumably by Old Man Zangetsu's doing. We get to see the progress Ichigo and Zangetsu have made in their relationship, in that Ichigo is now able to hear Zangetsu's voice in real time, in the midst of battle. He can almost feel Zangetsu right next to him, which is an important measure of the progress Ichigo has made thus far. Old Man Zangetsu places his hand on Ichigo's shoulder and asks him if he can hear the screams of Zaraki's sword. Ichigo and Zangetsu can hear the sword howling out in pain because of how it's being misused. He then turns to Ichigo and asks him, "Do you trust me?" Ichigo answers confidently and tells him, "All of my strength is yours. Use it however you want. Lend me your power in order to win this battle." Old Man Zangetsu reaches down and grabs hold of Ichigo's blade, giving him a boost of power. Now, what is essentially happening here is that Ichigo right now has a student-to-master relationship with Old Man Zangetsu. He also sees Zangetsu as the one who gives him power. Believe it or not, that is not how the relationship between Zanpakuto and Soyopris is meant to be. We'll talk about that soon, in a second. Ichigo ultimately ends up defeating Zaraki and he's saved by Yoruichi, who nurses him back to health. The next time we see Old Man Zangetsu make an appearance is during Ichigo's Bankai training. Yoruichi uses what is called the Tenshintai, and the Tenshintai is essentially a device built by Kisuke Urahara that allows a Soul Reaper to attain Bankai in 3 days. What it does is that it forcibly draws out and manifests the Zanpakuto into physical form. Now of course we're in the Soul Society, so it's not physical, but you get my point. To conduct Ichigo's Bankai training, Old Man Zangetsu summons a huge number of swords and tells Ichigo that the real Zangetsu is among these blades. In order to defeat him, Ichigo has to find the real Zangetsu and defeat him with it. Now Kuba then takes it one step forward and shows that each of the swords symbolize an aspect of Ichigo's psyche, giving each sword dual meaning. This is all fine, but I do have an issue with this, and it's basically that we don't get to see Ichigo actually find the sword Zangetsu said he should find. We don't see Ichigo actually achieve Bankai. All we know is the next time we see him, he's already had it. And that's kind of weird to me, but knowing what we know, I guess I can understand what Kuba was going for. In any case, Ichigo goes on to defeat Byakuya and everything's right with the world. He goes back to the world of the living and we enter the Arrancar saga. Now, Ichigo is met with some troubling circumstances that send his mental and emotional state of mind into a downward spiral. Ichigo's hollow starts to take control and his presence is overwhelming. This causes Ichigo to seek out the Visors, who are a group of Shinigami that have crossed over into the realm of the Hollow. They conduct a ritual of sorts to pit Ichigo against his Hollow, and when Ichigo emerges in his inner world, he arrives not to see Old Man Zangetsu, but rather his Hollow, who has seemingly switched places and taken control of his power. Old Man Zangetsu does not appear during the struggle with White Ichigo. It more so establishes the relationship between he and White. You see, White and Old Man Zangetsu share the same body. They are seemingly one and the same. And when Old Man Zangetsu was in control of Ichigo's power, White was under his subjugation. But once Ichigo begins to tap into more of his power, which is an important point by the way, the trigger for White to begin to take over Ichigo's power is Ichigo accessing more of his power, which has a lot of implications once you know that White is truly Ichigo's real power, but we will talk about that later. In any case, this is Ichigo's new reality. White is now in control. Ichigo manages to overpower White and is seemingly able to wring back control from him and back to Old Man Zangetsu, but Kubo doesn't show Old Man Zangetsu here and we don't see him for a long time. And with that point, this is what we can honestly call one of Ichigo's biggest failures as a Shinigami. One of the important aspects of the life of a Shinigami is the synergy you have with your Zanpakuto. Soul Reapers are meant to talk and interact with their blades, but Ichigo completely forgets to do this. Even after learning that Old Man Zangetsu requires a relationship with Ichigo, he still just forgets and doesn't speak to him. You'd think that after cutting it close with White almost taking control of his body, you'd think that Ichigo would want to touch base with Old Man Zangetsu, but he doesn't. He continues to focus on himself in what is a very tragic turn of events. He goes into Wekumundo, attempts to save Orihime, is called into the battle against Aizen, and it's not until he needs to learn the final Getsuki Tensho that he goes back into his inner world. Isshin teaches Ichigo the Jinzen stance and has Ichigo enter his inner world once again. But this time, things are different. This time, the entire world is submerged in water. And the one that stands before him is not an old man, but a young-looking individual, one whose name is Tensou Zangetsu, and one who has a strikingly similar visage to Yhwach during his younger years. And so here we have a back and forth between Ichigo and Tensou Zangetsu. Ichigo comes to learn that what was once a world filled with bright sunny skies and towering skyscrapers has been reduced to a fallen city buried underneath an ocean of water. This is because Ichigo fell into despair. He let his fear overcome him, and really, more important than the fear and despair Ichigo felt, it is his lack of care for Zangetsu that really creates the issue. Through all of this, there's a lack of perspective on Ichigo's part, who seemingly doesn't even care how Old Man Zangetsu feels about losing control to White. He doesn't seem to care about how Old Man Zangetsu has felt about this entire situation, left alone in this lonely world, without a companion, and without anyone but the terrifying hollow embodiment. He's left to remain in an ocean of sadness, and Ichigo really only thinks about himself. It's a negative on Ichigo's character, one that has to be pointed out. And so, Tensou Zangetsu pulls out the source of Ichigo's despair, and it turns out to be White Ichigo. The two then merge and stand before Ichigo. They are the embodiment of his power, and they refuse to teach Ichigo the final Getsuki Tensho. Now, the importance of this scene lies not in what is said, but what is not said. It lies not in what is done, but what is not done. This merged version of White and Old Man Zangetsu could have easily overpowered Ichigo, but he doesn't. He could have ended the battle rather easily, but he doesn't. He's saying things that are meant to hurt Ichigo and push him away, but what he's not saying is telling a different story. Ichigo is feeling nothing but sadness emanating from his sword. Zangetsu is sad. He's not angry, resentful, or hateful. Most of all, more than anything else, he's just in pain. He's in pain because he knows what is about to happen and what it means for his relationship with Ichigo. Ichigo allows himself to be impaled by the blade and learns the secret of the final Getsuga Tensho. Once the technique is activated, Ichigo will lose all of his spiritual energy and will no longer have the ability to see or communicate with Zangetsu. The reason Zangetsu did not want to teach Ichigo this technique is because he wants to protect Ichigo in his own way. He knows Ichigo more than anyone else. He knows that Ichigo is one who needs power to be happy. Ichigo needs power to be content. He knows that even more so than the loneliness that awaits him on the other side, he knows that Ichigo will not have the power to protect, and that aspect of his character, that thing that makes Ichigo Ichigo, will be gone, and Ichigo will undoubtedly suffer for it. Not merely suffer for it, he'll suffer without him. Zangetsu won't be there to help him. He won't be there to save Ichigo if necessary. Ichigo will be cast into a world far beyond his reach, and that terrifies him. But as is seemingly the case with Zanpakuto law, the Zanpakuto is not greater than the Shinigami. At the end of the day, the Zanpakuto is born from the Shinigami and subjugated to their wills. So even though he doesn't agree and doesn't want to give Ichigo the technique, once Ichigo figures out how to learn it, Zangetsu cannot stop him. He says his goodbye, and Ichigo, carrying on the wills of the entire world, sacrifices his life as he knows it and casts away his powers to defeat Aizen Sasuke. Kubo then takes the story into the Fullbring arc, and we don't see Zangetsu at all during this arc, which really bugs me. Not because we didn't see him at the start, that is expected, but Ichigo's lack of, I guess, care for Zangetsu is striking. Like, dude, you cast your powers away and haven't seen or spoken to Zangetsu in 17 months. Your life was almost ended at the hands of Ginjo Kugo, and you managed to get your powers back. How is it that your first instinct isn't to check on your Zanpakuto, to say something to him, to welcome him back, something, anything? But no, not only does Ichigo not do that, doesn't say anything to Zangetsu, and they don't make an appearance until the reforging of his Zanpakuto at the hands of Nimaya Uetsu chapters later, many chapters later. It's so frustrating. But in any case, right here is where Zangetsu's final moments are made clear and truths are finally revealed. So here's the deal, okay? Here's the deal. Old Man Zangetsu is in fact not Ichigo's Soipa powers. I mean, he is, but he isn't. Let me explain. Ichigo's mother is a purebred Quincy who was attacked by a hollow, and she married a Shinigami who became human, making Ichigo part Quincy but also part Shinigami. Now, this is a question that has popped up in the past and I haven't had an answer for it in the longest time, but I think I have an answer now. Put on your thinking caps, we're going into Kubology Zone. Since Old Man Zangetsu is the embodiment of Ichigo's Quincy power taking the form and appearance of Yuha Baha from 1,000 years ago, does it mean that other Quincy have this Yuha embodiment within them? For the longest time, I've not had an adequate answer, but I believe the reason Ichigo is different from other Quincy is twofold. The first is because Ichigo is a Soiper, and the second is because Old Man Zangetsu is actually Zangetsu. Now I know I'm saying something that was either obvious or I'm talking crazy. Let's break it down. This is what we know for sure. The true source of Ichigo's Soipa powers, according to Nimaya and Old Man Zangetsu himself, is White. White is like an Arrancar spirit. He's both hollow and Soiper. Ichigo's hollow is his Soipa powers. I think we all understand that point. However, the key difference here is in the details. First of all, Ichigo's true Zanpakuto is not one sword, it's two swords. Why is it two swords? If White is his real Zanpakuto, you'd expect it to be one sword, but it's not, it's two sword. One represents White, what does the other represent? Old Man Zangetsu, his Quincy powers. Now, building on that, I've come to actually believe that the way we view White as a hollow that is merged with his Shinigami powers is the same way we should view Old Man Zangetsu. He's a Quincy who was also merged with Ichigo's Shinigami powers. That is the reason why Ichigo's Quincy Ryatsu has to get an embodiment. Under Zanpakuto rules, your Zanpakuto will have a physical embodiment inside your inner world. Since Ichigo's hollow merged with his Zanpakuto, his hollow gets an embodiment. In the same way, since Ichigo's Quincy powers also merged with his Zanpakuto, his Quincy powers also get an embodiment. And that is why you won't find that in Uryu or Basbi or Jugrim or other Stern Ritter, because they're not operating under Zanpakuto rules. Beyond that, when you consider what happens against Yuha, Ichigo unleashes Horn of Salvation and you can see Quincy Ryotsu emanating from his Zanpakuto, as in the source of Ichigo's Quincy powers for that move is coming from Zangetsu. It is Zangetsu. White and Old Man Zangetsu are both truly, in every sense of the word, they are truly and fully Zangetsu together. The anime actually goes on to add a line that cements this idea. Nimaya says word for word, and I'm quoting, "That's right, they were both real." As in, White and Old Man Zangetsu are both Zangetsu. It's not that Ichigo's hollow merged with his Soiber powers and that's like a power pool over there, and then he also has Quincy. No. The Quincy power and the hollow power merged naturally, organically with his Soiber powers, and both are his Zanpakuto. And for that reason, under Zanpakuto rules, both need an embodiment. The hollow got White and the Quincy got Yuha. And it's actually funny because Old Man Zangetsu himself didn't want to believe it. He felt that he was unworthy. He thought that he lied to Ichigo and needed to step aside. It was Ichigo who put everything together and understood that all of them together, including Ichigo himself, are Zangetsu. The blade is me. There's a synergy across all of them. In this heart-to-heart interaction with Old Man Zangetsu, I'm going to go back and cover this because I skipped ahead a little bit, but I'm going to go back. We find out Old Man Zangetsu's true intentions. We find out that Old Man Zangetsu didn't want Ichigo to become a Soiper. He didn't want Ichigo to go down the path of a protector because it would mean that he was in harm's way. And it would mean that he would ally himself with Soipers and inevitably run into the real Yuha Baha. And so, in order to protect Ichigo from that fate, he assumed control of his power and restricted it. He meant to keep things that way until he slowly found himself rooting for Ichigo. Watching Ichigo from a distance, he began to ally with his cause and eventually found himself wanting to help Ichigo succeed. The two of them then reconcile and we get a moment that I've lauded as the single most important moment in the entirety of Bleach. The blade is me. I've spoken about it enough, you guys know how I feel about it. So when it comes to the character of Old Man Zangetsu, what we find is an individual that only had one wish in life. His only wish was to protect Ichigo. Ichigo was always portrayed as a protector, and he is, he truly is, but Ichigo himself has protectors, people who watch over him from a distance and do what they can to assist him. He has his mother who gave her life to save him. He has his father who instructs and corrects him, and then he has these two pillars, older brothers in a way. On one side, you have White, who acted as an obstacle for Ichigo to overcome and gave him, for lack of a better term, tough love, something that was necessary for Ichigo's growth. He was hard on Ichigo, but he was always there when Ichigo needed him. And then on the other hand, you have Old Man Zangetsu, who acted more as a kind, loving older brother, one who had a gentle voice and acted as a voice of logic and reason for Ichigo, instructing him, teaching him, and reminding him of what is ultimately important. He spoke no lies to Ichigo, but at the same time spoke the greatest lie of all. Is he, or is he not Zangetsu? In one way, he's a liar who acted as though he was Zangetsu when he wasn't. But in another way, he was actually worthy of the name Zangetsu as much as White himself was. He lied, but he also didn't lie. And that's why I've aptly dubbed him an honest liar. Old Man Zangetsu, or maybe I should simply just say Zangetsu, is Bleach's honest liar. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Be sure to like, comment, and most of all subscribe, and I will see you in the next Rebirth video. This is the road to 50K. This is your boy, signing out. Peace.